This is 2 Samuel 3:11, 3:15 through 19. Ishboth sent and took her from her husband, even from Paltiel, son of Leshan. So this is referring to the woman that David, for those who don't know, it's when David killed these bunches of Philistines. Saul was promising his daughter to anyone who would bring him and kill so many Philistines. And David ends up doubling that number, so he ends up winning the right to marry Saul's wife. And but something happens, and she's with him for a time, and then is gone. And now at this point, she's married to somebody else. So David's saying, "Okay, you want peace? Give me my wife back." So at this point, because she went elsewhere, she was married to someone else. I don't know if Saul, because of his bad relationship with David, took his daughter away and gave her to another man, or what exactly happened. And that Bible don't go into detail, but either way, she's married to someone else. And her husband went with her along, weeping behind her to Baram. Then said Abner unto him, "Go, return," and he returned. So her husband's obviously discouraged because this is happening. He's losing his wife. First off, this pact to her being married to him should have never happened anyway. The fact that, and it ain't his fault completely, although we see Jesus referring to certain things like that in Matthew 5 about marriage and divorce. So in a way, but it's more importantly Saul's family's fault. And more importantly, Saul's fault that this is happening. Because she should have never not been married to David if that was the agreement. David's just holding it to agreement, and this guy's just... And sometimes with things, there'll be bystanders. When God's will is, because we're all sinners, and some as Christians we're saved by grace, and due to that, when God leads us to do something, there may be people who get hurt along the way. It ain't necessarily sin. David wanting his wife back wasn't sinful, but there was people, this guy got hurt because of it. Because doing right sometimes will hurt people. Because people like the darkness. And Abner said unto David, "I will arise and go, and will gather all Israel unto my..." Wait, no, that's not the right verse. "And Abner had communication with the elders of Israel, saying, Ye sought for David in times of past to be king over Israel." So he's communicating most likely with the elders of Benjamin. But any of the elders that stood against David with the war that they were having is who he would be speaking to. He wouldn't be speaking to David's allies, because David's allies are behind him. So he's speaking against the ones that stand against David, trying to get them on his side to make peace. Because as long as somebody stood against David, there wouldn't be peace. And in turn, they'd be standing against God, because God's plan was for David to be king. So Abner's at this point making peace because he don't see him winning. And sometimes people will turn to God when they don't see nothing else is going their way. This doesn't mean they're saved. It could mean they're desperate. It can mean they're saved. Because sometimes people come to faith there in times when all they have is God. But sometimes they just go to Him because nothing else is working. And then the way most people can tell is after their problem goes away. Is their commitment still to God, or was it just to Him until that commitment went away? Because oftentimes people will turn to God during the hard times, and when things are fixed, they'll go back to what they knew. And I think Abner was that type of person. He was, okay, we're losing the war. Let's just make David king to stop all the bloodshed. And Abner really hadn't changed. He was still looking out for his own. He was making peace before it cost him his own life, most likely. Now then do it, for the Lord hath spoken of David, saying, by the hand of my servant David I will save my people Israel out of the hand of the Philistines and out of the hand of all their enemies. In part, this has already happened. David has won many battles. It said, and I don't know if it mentions in Scripture, it does mention Solomon not fighting any wars and having an area of peace. This is mainly, and I don't, like I said, I don't know if Scripture says it clearly, but because David won all the battles. Anyone who stood against Israel, David, by God leading him, won that battle to where Solomon didn't have to fight. This is also the reason why Solomon was so rich, because of all these battles and things they won. And God's blessing was poured out on them because they didn't have any defeats. They just kept gaining. So, but this is a prophecy here. And it's at this time it's being fulfilled, has been fulfilled somewhat, and will be completely fulfilled by the time his reign ends. Because you see the later years of David's life, he isn't fighting foreigners. He's fighting men of his own family for the most part, trying to maintain his throne because of their jealousy. It's internal struggles that he's dealing with, not other people's. So, and Abner also spake in the ears of Benjamin, and Abner went to speak to the ears of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel, and they seemed good to the whole house of Benjamin. So Benjamin at this point is willing to accept David as their new king. And this is big, because Benjamin was the main people standing against David, trying to get Ishbosheth as king. So the fact that the main resistance was being gone would mean David is finally, after all this time, not just king of Judah, but going to be king of all of Israel. But we see a division here, and this division would come back later after Solomon. And it would never be reunited as a kingdom again. They'd always be two separate kingdoms. Which means that when we do deal with something and resolve something, we should try our best efforts to keep that division and that thing resolved so it don't come up again. Oftentimes we just put it aside where we really don't fix the problem, and it comes up later in a different scenario. Fact is, David's line was the line God called to be king. It wasn't to be questioned to where they'd start a second kingdom. But oftentimes, we as fallen people go against what God wills. And then it's just easier to further walk away. It causes us more trouble. But we should always, once we know we're outside God's will, whether what motive behind it, we should try to make peace like Abner's doing here.